Hello, everyone, again. And just for Petra, I brought back the matrix slide. So in the next half hour or so, Adam and I will walk you through what we're currently working on to determine what connections, what we will be working on for connections post connections 8. Yesterday, we talked about where we are with connections 8, right? So I gave you the transition from coming from the sketches to what code actually currently looks like in implementing the new features. So now we're completely shifting gear and looking beyond V8, the things that we're looking at, the things that we're working on, what we take as input from all of you to shape what connections post 8 will look like. So, oops, hold on. There we go. I'm joined by Adam, so I'll do the first few slides and then I'll hand it over to Adam for the second part. But let's start with what we've shared so far, right? So yesterday, like I said, I was talking up to this point here with V8. And just as a reminder, the focus that we put on V8 is about redesigning the user experience, where we take a fresh look at the navigation on the main level of connections down to the first, second, and third level within the applications. We're updating the search experience to make that easier for users to get from starting to search to finding the content, as well as making the share within and out of connections easier for users to work on. So, but now what is the next step? What do we look at once we've finished working on all of this? What we call it is strengthen the core, this theme here, and we will focus on a couple of things that are key to the connections experience. We've always worked on improving things around the community, right? So we always work on improving how you can lay out a community. So highlights comes to mind here, where you have a better framework to design and create a rich experience for the community landing page. But at the same time, we also want to focus on how can you actually better manage a community. Life cycle and the membership comes to mind here, right? So that's a big theme where we see requests where we want to make sure that a community owner can take better care of their community. The other big theme is around engagement, and engagement is driven by a number of things. We come back to navigation here, but it's a different navigation that we have in mind here. But it's also about communication and notifications, right? There are a lot of requests that we hear around how can we better send notifications to our end users? How can they determine what kind of updates they would like to get? And then thirdly is around the individual apps and integration with other apps outside of connections. So with V7, you know that we put a lot of effort in integrating with Teams and Office and SharePoint, so the Microsoft stack. So there are things that we want to improve there, but then there's also other areas that we want to improve the integration, our own portfolio being one of them, of course. So that is the high level direction that we will take post V8, and we shared this before, right? So this is consistent. This is something that we established a while ago as the direction, and now Adam and I will give you a bit more insight into how we actually fill those high level themes with a bit more life and actual items that we'll plan to work on. So how did we end up or how do we get to that point where we know exactly what features we will be working on? We have opened up AHA in the idea portal, I don't know, 2 years ago or so, and maybe a bit before that, and I think 3 years. And we have had a lot of submissions into AHA with enhancement requests, large and small, right? Very specific things for each of the different areas in the product. And I think we got up to the latest idea that was submitted yesterday. It was, I think, 2,156 or something like that. So we had over 2,100 submissions into AHA. And Adam and I went through each one of them. We were off to a slow start, as some of you, might comment. But we actually caught up quite a while ago and have touched every single idea that is in AHA. So we cleaned out a few. Some were miscategorized and weren't actually connections related. And then I don't know how people figure it out. There's a whole bunch of spam in there. Somebody needs to explain that to me, how somebody ends up spamming AHA for a particular product. It's just nuts. But after cleaning all of this out, we now have a complete body of about 1,750 ideas that are valid enhancement requests to connections. So it's a large amount of enhancement requests that are in the system. And of course, some of them are similar or duplicates, etc. But what we did is to categorize them into main groups, and then taking it another step forward, take the ones that fit into the high-level themes that I've just shown you on the previous page and categorizing them into those buckets and then split them down even further. So what you see on this screen here is a list that maps the categories before with a subdivision and then individual ideas that people submitted that we're taking a closer look at. So I'm spending this much time to explain all of this to you because I want to get across that we are listening to the ideas that have been submitted, right? That's a complaint we've gotten in the past, that people feel like nothing's happening to it, but things take time, right? And especially with a large body of ideas like this, it does take time to filter through it, sift through it. But I want to assure you that everything you all put into AHA, we are considering in moving forward. Okay.
Yeah, and just to add to that, if I can, Rene, Rene said we've been through the ideas. We average probably about 20 ideas an hour just to review and say, okay, where should we categorize this? We'll go over and we'll confirm things. Some will flag because we want to meet with development on it. Some of these we're going in going, well, it sounds more like a bug than an enhancement. Let's see if we can get that into a release sooner rather than later. So we are taking these very seriously when we go through. It's not a quick glance through, checking off, how they fit in and where we think they might go. But we're really taking the time to understand the ideas. Sometimes we'll follow back up, asking more questions to clarify them. And just the other thing I want to comment on, one of the things that's really important for us in this is having that transparency into where these are. And so as we're going through it, there's a category, I think it's called no plans at this time. I forget how we phrased it, but we want to be upfront where, there are very, very few ideas in here that we look at and go, well, that's just a bad idea. There are ideas where we go, well, that's a good idea, but we know that we're going to have other priorities that come in above it. And, realistically, we're not going to get to it this release or the next release. And so it might be several years out before we get to it. And rather than putting it in an under consideration or future consideration category, have you sitting there going, oh, I hope I get it, and then be disappointed when you don't. We'd rather be upfront and honest, saying, okay, it's not something we think we're going to be able to focus on right now. It's either very hard to do or not aligned with higher priority aspects based on the other ideas we've gotten in or conversations we've had one-on-one with some of you. And so that's why we're marking it there. It doesn't mean it won't change in the future. It's why we phrased it as we did and not, will never be delivered or something like that. But it's trying to just set the expectations properly for where this fits in relative to other priorities. Back over to you, Rene.
Yep. So now let's take the next step here and look at the different areas. So what we did here is pick up that element from the roadmap, and we're going to dive a little deeper now to talk about specifically what enhancement we see like good items for us to cover in each of those segments. So the first one is community management. And as you've seen before, we divided that up into a topic called life cycle and another topic called members. So when we talk about life cycle in a community, it's all about how or where the community stands in terms of its active use, right? Is it a community that's actually in the process of being created? So it shouldn't really be live yet. It's not open to the public. We're still creating content. As opposed to a community that's been out for a long time, but maybe the topic in there is one that nobody really works on anymore, but we don't want to delete it because it's still corporate knowledge and part of what we might need in the future to come back to. But let's close this community down in a sense that there's no active development of content anymore, no active collaboration. It serves more of a body of work that we go back to look at again. So the community is not really active. So anything on that level fits in here, as well as life cycle of individual elements, right? Maybe a wiki should not be open for comments anymore. And then we take a look at members and membership. So when we talk about a community, it's very much driven by who is in the community. Is it public? Is it closed? And who can do what in the community? So we'll take a one step closer to looking at how can we improve what a community owner can do when it comes to managing members, and what can members do in the community. So if we take this one level down, you'll see that we divided up the life cycle. So we're talking specifically about the life cycle topic now. We talk about everything that's related to the backup, the delete, or the restoring of content. And this could be an entire community, or it could be the wiki. So I have 3 example ideas that I just want to highlight. For example, when it comes to delete, right? Maybe you want to be able to delete multiple wikis at the same time. Right now, you can only delete one, and then you have to do it one by one by one by one. Wouldn't it be nice if you can multi-select, right? Another idea would be that you have more capabilities around backing up just one individual community out of connections and then restore just that community later, right? Technically, this can be done today, but it could be easier, especially for a community owner. And this, by the way, is something that the extension toolkit is doing, which is an asset. So one of the questions in AHA was, well, why don't we make the extension toolkit part of connections? And that's a very valid question, right? Because there are a number of very useful tools in there that help you in managing content within a community and the community itself. There are also other comments around retention, right? And specifically how the trash within connections, once it's deleted, it's gone. Is there a better way to deal with that? Next sub-content here, or subtopic, would be the content expiration and archiving. So here I go back to what I talked about earlier. When a community comes to its end in its life cycle where it's not really active collaboration anymore, so I want to mark the community as inactive or as read-only, right? People can still see everything, but you wouldn't be able to upload new content to it, add a new file, or leave a comment here. It's just closed off. You can see it, but it's not open for collaboration anymore. And then the third sub-theme here is the ability to disable comments, which kind of goes hand in hand with the one above a little bit. But if you just want to disable comments for individual files or individual blogs, right? Because topic's done, you don't want to drive the conversation forward. Wouldn't that be a nice thing that you could do? Okay, transfer content basically talks about everything where not only could you transfer a file from one owner to the other, which we introduced a while ago, but more importantly, couldn't you transfer one wiki from one community to another? And this is where the extension toolkit comes in, right? That's an ability that you can do there, but it's not part of the core product. So that's something that we want to tackle. Now let's switch over to the membership topic. And as you can see here, we have 6 sub-themes, because membership is certainly an area where we have a lot of ideas in AHA, where people think about how can I make it easier to manage who is in my community, one angle. The other angle I am a user. I want to know, what communities I'm a member of and how can I join this community easier, etc. So access rights is something where right now the philosophy is that everybody who joins a community has more or less the same rights. Yes, there is an owner versus a normal member, and an owner can do certain things that a member can't do when it comes to managing the community, but there is no distinction between a member and a reader, right? It could be useful to have a membership role where you can actually see what's in the community, but you're not allowed to contribute, right? So that would be an example for the access rights topic. If we then look at how can you better add or remove community members, that's another area for the community owner where today you don't have a way to remove multiple people at the same time. There's no bulk removal, right? You have to do it individually, which can be pretty tedious. But then also hygiene in terms of seeing who is still a member of the community that's actually an inactive user, right? There is no view where you can actually see at a glance what types of users do you have? Are they active? Are they inactive? And then how can I remove all the inactive users, right? So that type of hygiene and keeping the membership list current is another area that we think would be very valuable. The member management functionality is back to the inactive users topic, right? Wouldn't it be nice if I could actually alert the community owner if I have, XYZ being an inactive user or a number of inactive users that don't contribute anymore, and just alert the owner to say, here, something you could clean up. And along those lines, when people request to join a restricted but public community, there is no easy way for the community owner to go to one view where all the membership requests are listed. It's basically you have to go to the activity stream and then there look at open actions, to-dos, to then approve these members, which is a bit disconnected. And I just want to skip to the last one here, the sub-community membership management. There are a couple of things there that we can certainly improve on, right? For example, I'm thinking of only members of the main community can become members of the sub-community. That one will be very difficult to fix, but at least we want to give it a shot. But there are other things around. If you want to add somebody to a sub-community, you have to add them to the main community first. Why not make that a one-click action, where today you have to add them to the main community, then switch to the sub-community, then add the user there, right? It's just too many steps, right? So improving the flow for how sub-community members are managed is another area where we saw a lot of interest. Okay, I'll pause here, and this is where I hand it over to Adam to talk about the next two sections.
Great, thanks, Rene. Hopefully my headset will carry through for the next 20 minutes or so. So as Rene said, the next area we want to focus on here is around engagement. And there are two main pieces here. The first is around communication and navigation, right? So we know that Engagement Center has played a large role for a lot of you in terms of how you manage your connections environment, setting up social intranets that pull content and integrate in with all of the social capabilities of connections. And we want to make sure we're continuing to focus on that and enhance that. We also recognize that just navigation in general, how you find things in connections, how you can move back and forth between communities and content or different elements within a community, that is really important also, right? It means you can find content faster, you can get where you're trying to go, and you can keep your focus on what you're trying to get done and not be distracted by the tool. So that is an important piece of things too. We're looking to address some of that with Connections 8 already, but that will continue to be a focus for us. And then the other area around engagement is with the updates and notifications, right? That it's really central to a solution like Connections is being able to see what's going on in your network, to see and share those updates, to get notifications that there's something of interest that you should look at, or an action that's waiting for you, or someone that needs a response to something. And we know that there's a better balance in how you get notified and where you get notified, and the type of control you have over those notifications that that we could offer through connections. And so they're actually, it's interesting going through as we've been classifying these ideas. Some things that we thought would be priorities haven't been as big a priority, and other things that we weren't expecting to need to focus on are coming through as having a lot of interest. So let's go to the next page and start to look at the communication and navigation piece first. So we broke these out separately because we know we need to focus on engagement center as its own thing, but then also the overall navigation. So for engagement center, there were some general ideas that came up. Things like, relevant to the previous presentation, having customizer work with engagement center pages, right? So that the customizations you make in connections proper can come through in engagement center as well. There were enhancement requests around layout. So how you work with the templates, how you lay out the pages, the ease of use and the control that we can give you around that. For example, there's a concern raised that the page template overrides some of the widget configuration when you go to inherit pages from that template. It may override the configurations that you already set. So making sure that doesn't happen and set you back there. There were a number of requests for improvements to the widgets themselves. So for example, a custom widget similar to the top news update, or better enhancements around the news widgets. We have a number of different ways of bringing news forward, but you may find that even with 4 or 5 options there still isn't one that completely meets your needs, or that you may want to customize that further. Also coming in as an idea for improving the widgets are things like replying to comments in the embedded view. So it's great that you have an embedded view, but where you can comment, but it doesn't let you reply to comments in that view. So taking that one step further would be requested. And then there are requests for new widgets as well. Other ways of viewing content, other ways of bringing forward content that exists in connections, but we don't have a widget for today. So those are all things that we'd be taking into consideration when we look at how to make engagement center more usable and more engaging for your users. On the navigation front, this really fell into a few camps as well. As a good example where I was saying we had some things that the direction we're getting from AHA is definitely helpful. So one are idea of breadcrumbs. So making it easier to navigate between engagement center and connections, for example. We know that engagement center provides a much more user-friendly front end, but I click on a blog post and now I'm in my blog in a community, and that's good. I can see, I can interact with it, but now I want to be able to quickly get back to that intranet page I was on before. And sometimes I can find that you go 1 or 2 clicks away from where you started, and now you're not quite sure how to get back to where you were before. So making it easy to navigate back and forth between those tools, for example. Another one is an administrator setting to open links in a new tab or window and be able to set that as a default. There are a number of requests around what happens when you click on something in a notification. And so that's what we mean by that category of go to a related event or follow-up action. So I get a notification, maybe it's an email, maybe it's in Orient Me or Activity Stream, maybe it's my notification center. But what are my options for clicking through on those items, and where does it take me? So increasing consistency or giving more options there. And then the last broad category we call navigation components. And these are things like improvements to the wiki navigation. I've got that bar on the left that lets me navigate through my wiki. How can we improve on that? Or improve the left sidebar in files. In wiki, it's resizable In community, I think in regular files it is, in community files it isn't. So how do we make it more usable so that you can better control the space that you have on the screen and set it up the way you want? So there were a number of other ideas like that that came in under that broad heading of navigation components. How do you actually use the navigation today? And how do we make that more user-friendly? On the updates and notifications, this is, if you remember the slide that Rene showed before, with the screenshot of all of the ideas. This was that large one on the right. There were over 55 ideas, all related to updates and notifications. And so the categories we have here, at the high level, we've got administration. Things like being able to go in and set universal notification preferences for all users via command or a GUI, both existing users and new users that come in. So we've had requests for that. There are a few other administration requests. There are a number of requests around notification preferences for me as an end user. So how can I better control what notifications I get or where they come through? So for example, I might want a preference to not follow content I changed myself. I know I made that edit to that document. I don't need a reminder in my activity stream or notification in email that it was updated. I know I updated it. Or allow users to set different notification interval settings for different communities, right? My day-to-day project team, I want to see everything that's happening there, but maybe the HR community, I'm good with a weekly update. So more granular controls over what updates I get at a community level. There were a number of requests for updates to the format and content of that notification itself, the wording that's used, how it's formatted, what actions I can take on it. So for example, being able to accept or decline community invitations right from within the notification, rather than having to go into connections, into the community to then act on that. More useful email notifications. So more giving me more options to act on content that's in there. We know that's similar, that in terms of accepting or declining a notification or responding to something directly from that email, for example. Another comment was that links in the notification center don't point to the actual content. So it might take me to the blog post, but not the reply that showed up in my notification center. That might be 3 levels down from there. So again, making it more directly applicable. If I get a notification, I want to act on it, take me right to that action point. The description notification triggers we went back and forth on how to describe that, but that's basically more control over what I can issue a notification on, or what will trigger that notification to go out to team members or people that requested it. And one example here is being able to mention a community to notify all members of that community. In this case, there's an external community they want to do that too. Actually, I'm sorry, that's a separate one, right? So mention a community to notify all members. With Connections 8, we're adding the ability to share with a community. The next step there would be mention a community. Every time this comes up, I get people who go, yes, thank you, I want to do that. I've got my team. I don't have to go in and mention 5 people or 10 people to do it. And then I get people at the same time going, no, don't allow that, because I'm a member of a 30,000 person HR community. And all I need is for someone to go, hey, I think this would be helpful for everyone in that community. And now everyone's getting spammed with it. We would only do this if we can go in and add the controls that let the community manager say, can we do this or not? Or set some sort of universal cutoff that says if there are more than, 12 or 20 people in a community, don't allow it. But anyway, we'd have controls over that. Other things are sending out notifications to external team members. Today, external members don't get those notifications. A notification if a file or folder is deleted. Can certainly see why that would be something that would be desired for a community I manage or a folder that I created. So those are just a couple examples. There are a lot more of those notification triggers that are in there. We had a number of requests around improvements to notifications on mobile. So for example, more control and better tie-ins to the operating system feed in terms of what shows up there or doesn't. It's often a hit or miss thing, whether it's too chatty or too reserved in terms of what shows up there. So offering more control over that, letting users configure those mobile push notifications, just like they can configure browser push or email notifications. And then the last aspect was send email. So being able to have more control or more options for sending mail to the community. And an example here is being able to include groups that were added to the community in that send email function. So today I can go in and add a group as a member and mass to that community rather than having to go in and add each member individually. That's great, but that group does not get an email notification if an email goes out to the community members. So if I'm only part of that community because I'm in that group, I'm not going to get that notification. So that's just another example. There were more that came up in that send email category. And then the last major category here, the major theme, is around apps and integration. And similar to what we had before, there are added capabilities that people want to see, enhancing connections apps to extend the integrated experience, reduce the need for multiple best-of-breed services. So this might be adding capabilities to wikis, for example, so that I don't need a third-party wiki or blog or forum if we're using one today because we feel like you all feel like connections isn't quite delivering all the features you want. There's expansions within the HCL ecosystem. So this might be same-time integration with meetings and chat, or integrating with other HCL digital solution offerings, or improving the integrations we have today. And then the last aspect is better integration with third-party applications. So either improving the third-party integration that we have today, or adding new integration with third parties so that we can offer end users a way of having connections serve as that hub and offering better integration in, right? For example, it might be enhancing the Microsoft Teams integration that we introduced with v7, or bringing in other chat or meeting tools or other third-party applications so that you can interact with them, get updates, and operate them directly from inside connections. And so here we found, as we went through to classify these, you can see we kind of group them together by application. So it might be application integration to files or mail or meetings or messaging. Productivity suite, there were a number of requests for that as well as improving existing integration. So examples of some of these might be, integration to mail, allowing you to share community files from or to Verse. For a meeting, we had requests to share to a Zoom chat, or to be able to launch meetings directly from inside of connections, and making it easy to do that, to move back and forth between connections and the meeting provider of your choice. Same-time integration came up for messaging from a messaging integration standpoint, and looking to improve on that. And that's something that's been top of mind for us as same-time continues to make enhancements, and we look to as well. And a number of requests for improving existing integration. So for example, adding like and commenting functionality into the embedded experience. We know that that's available. Today you've got to click through to the full post to do that. So adding that in better there, or for third-party applications. Improving the appearance when third-party updates come in. Content generated via API does not always come through with the best formatting when it's brought into the activity stream, or when they're brought into the daily digest. So looking to improve on that. Adding support for additional elements of Teams integration, and working with that. For example, dark mode, or this integration both into connections as well as outward. So we have the integration in v7 of integrating connections, applications into Teams. We don't yet have dark mode support for that. So if I'm running Teams in dark mode, click over to my connections wiki or my connections files, suddenly I'm brought back into light mode again. So that's something else that we'd be looking to do there. And then the last piece was search. So additional integrations into search. We know that a universal search or integrated federated search is the holy grail here. so I can search for all my content no matter where it is inside of Connections. That this falls into the category of things that haven't been done already because they're very hard to do. Doesn't mean we won't keep looking at it and seeing what we can do there. But that's certainly something that we know is a high request there. So that sums up those three key themes that we're looking at here for Connections v.Next as we look to move forward. As Rene said at the beginning, we are taking all of these requests seriously. Please go in and vote on them. Voting is not the only metric we use. We know that over time, as more and more ideas came in, there's a recency effect, or it's a drop-off, I should say, where you can pretty much map the ideas with the most votes based on how quickly they were created after the AHA portal went live. So we're not looking at something that only has 2 votes and saying, oh, it must not be important. We're looking at every idea. We're looking at, if these came in with underlying service requests, we've been tickets, we looked at that. But please go in, add your ideas, keep doing so, keep voting on things that are important to you so that we do have that as a metric, as one additional piece of information. Because we are using that to help guide the direction we're going in. So just to wrap up, as we're the last session here, we thought it would be good to wrap up and come full circle back to where Richard and Andrew took us yesterday, which is the best way to plan your journey forward to v.Next is to keep current on Connections releases. Plan your upgrade to Connections v7. There are a lot of enhancements that are there that we made. We know a lot of you just got onto v6 or v6.5 not that long ago, but it's in your best interest and the best interest of your users to get the latest functionality out to them, to get that tailored experience and the templates and the new highlights page and all of the enhancements that came there, the Microsoft integration if you're running that in your organization too. Deploy the component pack. I think you heard some great examples from Dave earlier on what's available with that. And that also helps with number 1, because if you've moved your customizations to component pack, it makes those upgrades much, much simpler than they were in the past, where we've got to go recreate and test all of your enhancements and all of your customizations. So it's really go hand in hand. And then do explore the engagement center. We've been talking over the last 2 days about just how important engagement is with your users and how unique Connections as a tool is to do that. An engagement center is a great way of doing that. And hopefully you've had some experience now with the highlights capabilities inside of your communities, and especially if you've deployed Connection 7, the enhancements that came there. And it's a small step to go from there to give you more robust landing pages that you can use and personalize for your team members and for your organization. And it's a great way of making Connections stickier as well. And we're talking to customers that are paying a lot of money, and certainly a lot more than Engagement Center, for tools that don't work as well, that create yet another content repository that they need to manage, give access to, teach people how to use, or write on their behalf. And having this integration in really can be a big difference for you and your end users. So my final push there for Engagement Center and upgrading. But I will turn it back over to Maria. It's been great talking to you these last few days. You know where to find Rene and find me with any questions or anything you want in the future. We're always glad to meet one-on-one for briefings to answer questions or walk through the roadmap. And so Maria, I'll turn it back over to you.